Hey geometry students, welcome to today's geometry/art lesson. This is sort of a weird one, okay? This is not a standard lesson in the sense that we're going to be learning about just drawing things in geometry. We're not going to be learning proofs or theorems or definitions today. There's some definitions maybe, but we're learning how to draw things or why things are drawn a certain way in geometry. And I'm going to say this, if you are a student of art, if you're a student of art, then you probably already know some of the things that we'll be talking about in this lesson. Maybe you've never thought about them with respect to geometry before, but you've probably, if you've made artistic representations of things that look accurate, you've probably thought about this stuff before. That's what we're going to get going with. And some of you have maybe never thought about this. If you're not a student of the arts, then you maybe have not thought about this before. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to talk about perspective drawing. When you draw non-vertical parallel lines, okay, I just want you to imagine you're standing on the ground, and let's say you're standing in a classroom, you're looking toward the front of the classroom. The vertical parallel lines will be things going up and down, like the walls. Okay, so posters on the walls, the door on the wall would have vertical lines. Anything on the floor is going to have non-vertical lines. Okay, so the floor of the room, the ceiling of the room. And then you have a whole bunch of stuff that's in between. You have some things that are diagonal, reaching up from the floor toward the ceiling. But anyway, non-vertical parallel lines, those are the ones that are going away from you, or like they're level with the floor or level with the ceiling. Those ones appear to meet at a point in the distance called a vanishing point. Now, the best way for me to explain this is to show you. Here is a road. Let's say you're standing in the middle of the road, not recommended, and you're looking toward the distance. Now, you know that the edges of the road are parallel to each other. In Euclidean geometry, Euclid, right, he would observe that parallel lines never touch each other. Parallel lines are going to continue in both directions for infinity and never touch each other. But it appears to your eyes, the way that you naturally see things, as if those lines, those non-vertical parallel lines at the edges of the road meet on the horizon. And that is perspective drawing. We take into account the way that your eyes see things. The reason I said at the beginning of this lesson, you've probably never really thought about this before in terms of geometry. And again, some of you have. If you're a student of the arts, you know that this is a real thing you have to plan into your drawings, because if you don't, your drawings are going to look silly. You may look at a kindergartner's drawing of a road and how the edges of the road don't meet on the horizon. So like there's a horizon maybe in the background and then a road that just goes vertically upward, and it just looks weird because it doesn't meet at the horizon. But this is how people really see things. And your brain is just used to interpreting this as parallel, even without you having to think about it, because this is how you've experienced the world forever, since you were born. So that's what I wanted to talk about. This maybe seems a little counterintuitive because your brain is just used to processing this and thinking about it without having to actually think hard about it. All right, in perspective drawing, the horizon is a horizontal line in the distance that contains the vanishing point, where the non-vertical parallel lines intersect each other, where they meet. One point perspective is a drawing with just one vanishing point. Let's take a look at how to do a one-point perspective drawing. First of all, if you're trying to draw, let's say you're trying to draw a rectangular prism in a one-point perspective. You start by drawing a square and your horizon above it. Your horizon can be anywhere. You need to make a vanishing point on the horizon. In my example, the vanishing point is directly in the middle, but interestingly, you can make the vanishing point anywhere on the horizon. Looks a little weird if it's really far to the left or really far to the right, but as long as it's somewhere off to the left a little bit or off to the right a little bit, and especially if it's right above your shape that you're drawing, especially if you're trying to draw as if you're standing right in front of your shape, it's going to look decent as long as it's close. Again, if you put it off here, you can make a perspective drawing and it would probably be fine. It's just going to look a little strange. Like the perspective would be weird. Your brain would be like, wait a sec. wait a sec, what am I looking at here? All right, anyway, so we draw a square, a horizontal line above it, and then we mark a vanishing point somewhere on the line. Can be anywhere on the line. We next draw dashed lines from the vanishing point to each of the four corners of the square. See how that's been done in the drawing here? Okay, next we use the dashed lines to draw the sides of the smaller square. How do we do that? We choose points on the dashed lines. First of all, we choose one point on the dashed line to start, okay? And then we solidify that line up to the first corner. So I'm going to choose this point on the dashed line. Then we draw a line parallel to our original horizontal line until we reach the other dashed line. Then we solidify this part of the dashed line here. Next, we draw a vertical line up to the dashed line, and we solidify this part. And then we draw another vertical line up to the dashed line. We solidify this part, and then we draw a line that connects these two upper points. So basically, we're just drawing horizontals and verticals somewhere on the dashed line. You go as far back as you want. The farther back you go, the longer your prism is going to look. All right, so we drew this smaller square and we connected everything. If you erase the reference lines once you're finished, you're not going to worry about erasing your reference lines in here. But if you were actually doing a drawing, once you erase your reference lines, you have an actual perspective drawn prism that will look like you're expecting to see it. That's one point perspective, and that's one way we see the world. Another way that we see the world when we look at the edge, one of the vertical edges of a rectangular prism or any kind of prism, what we're going to see is something called two-point perspective. It's a drawing that has two vanishing points. Okay, so look at this. We're looking at the face of a prism here. Now, look at the difference in two-point perspective. What part of the prism are we looking at here? Notice that we're looking at one of the edges pointed toward us, one of the vertical edges, instead of one of the faces. Now, how do we do two-point perspective? Well, we start off the same way, except this time we're drawing a horizontal line and two vanishing points. And we're not drawing our square, you just draw a vertical line, okay? Vertical line below a horizontal line with two vanishing points. You get to choose your two vanishing points. And you want to make sure, if you want this to look good, your vanishing points are on either side of your line, okay? That's going to be the way that makes sense for your brain. You draw dashed lines from each vanishing point to the top and bottom. So we have four vertical lines, vanishing point to the top, vanishing point to the bottom, vanishing point top, vanishing point bottom. Next, we draw the vertical segments between the dashed lines. Just like we did in the previous, you kind of have to choose where you're going to put those. If we put we have to make sure the line is vertical, and then we're just going to connect the top dashed line to the bottom dashed line. Make sure it's parallel to this line. You do the same thing over here. If one side is longer than the other, you're going to end up with one rectangular face to your prism that's longer, and then the other one's going to be shorter. But this one, we're trying to draw it like equidistant, almost like a cube here, right? So we draw vertical segments between the dashed lines, and we connect everything by shading in the dotted lines to make everything look connected. Now we have the front few faces of our cube. All right, now from our new points, we added 1, 2, 3, 4 new vertices to our drawing where we connected to the dotted lines. The next thing we're going to do is from those points, we need to draw a dotted line to the other vanishing points. So one from here, one from here, one from here, one from here. So we started with 4 dashed lines. Now we're going to draw 4 more dashed lines. This looks a little complicated, but there's just a total of 8 dashed lines so that every vertex is connected to both vanishing points. Okay, so we do that. And then lastly, we draw a dashed vertical line between the two intersections of the perspective lines that we drew. So so here's a perspective line here. Here's a perspective line. Here, I'm going to see if I can zoom in. Perspective line here. and a new perspective line here. These are the new ones. Notice where these are intersecting our original perspective lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a new vertical line between the two intersections in the middle. And then we're going to connect the end of that line to the front of this cube and to this vertex, I guess the corner of this face. That's what I meant to say. And the corner of this face. So and then we're going to darken all of our lines showing the sides of the cube. All right. So that was a lot of talking. I think this is going to make sense as you do this yourself. You're just going to have to try this yourself. Follow these steps. Just so you know, these steps are in your geometry textbook if you prefer not to look at them on the screen. But you're going to need to be able to do drawings in 1 and 2 point perspective. You need to use a straight edge. You need to make sure you're faithful about drawing your dotted lines and your solid lines as carefully as possible. Let's take a look at some more examples of this, and then you'll be off on your own.